and it's a pleasure to be here and talking on this topic, which I very much enjoy educating people on, especially since it's such a dynamic landscape. Very exciting time to be involved in ebooks. It can also make it a confusing time because it seems like every week or two some kind of new service or new technology is announced. So I've given this presentation maybe 5 or 6 times over the past year or two, and every time I have to carefully update it and modify it because of the pace of transformation. So I'll talk a little bit later in the presentation about how you yourself can keep yourself updated beyond this presentation, but I'm hoping to kind of lay the principles as well as the current environment of e-publishing to help you, whether you're going to be doing it on your own or in partnership with the service. Now, one of the reasons we're even here today is because of the exponential growth of ebooks for sale, predominantly on Amazon. There are many retailers for ebooks, and we'll talk about them today, but Amazon is really driving a lot of what's happening in the market. And I just like to show this graph to kind of indicate the exponential growth that we're seeing that have even surpassed many of the trend lines from the Association of Publishers here in the United States. And certainly there have been commentators who have predicted this might slow down in the next year or two, but really what we're looking at is a market that's roughly 20% digital right now, meaning that your big 6 publishers are seeing about 20% of their sales come through ebooks and digital products. And some people predict that within the next 2 to 3 years, that will get very close to 50%. Now, the impact of that is not what we're here to discuss necessarily, but I do want to emphasize that, there's a lot of growth here, which is also spurring on a lot of the changes and the shifting in the market, which is why you have to be very kind of on top of who the players are and where they're throwing their weight around. Okay, so let's get down to brass tacks here and talk about the key attributes of e-publishing on your own, meaning without a publisher, and I usually call this DIY or independent publishing. First thing is that these services at their core are really free to use. What you end up doing, the way that you pay for the service, is that you're offering a cut of your royalties, or you might be paying a distributor to do the administrative work of pushing your ebook out to the retailers. And we'll get into more detail about what that means. But essentially, one of the reasons there's so much exuberance around e-publishing is that there's really no startup cost, at least nothing along the lines of what you would have experienced in the old days of print-on-demand and the older self-publishing companies where you might have paid thousands of dollars to get started. The other wonderful part about the service landscape is that, by and large, every service is non-exclusive. And that basically means that you can use them in tandem with each other. You can pull out at any time. You don't have to worry if you're tying up your rights. It's really on an at-will basis, meaning you can upload it today, take it down tomorrow, change the price, change the data. It's all under your control, and no one's telling you that you can or can't do this within a particular period of time. Of course, they may charge you, and we'll talk about that when fees come into play. But you needn't worry that you're sacrificing anything through either experimentation or trial runs or just, to see what happens. There isn't any particular tech expertise required, and by that I mean if you're already, conversant with online sites like Amazon, if you know your way around Microsoft Word, then you can get started today. It doesn't necessarily require you to be a techie. And if there are certain things you need to accomplish that fall outside your skill range, there are lots of services ready to provide some assistance for very reasonable costs. And I'm sure, as you're all aware, there isn't really any kind of gatekeeper here. A lot of the systems that you will be using are automated. Certainly they have some controls in place to check for material that would be plagiarized or offensive or against the terms and conditions. But there's not really like a human being or an editor going through the ebooks that are put up on these sites. It's mainly controlled by algorithm and other red flags that alert these services to when something might not be going right. Of course, that puts a lot of responsibility on you to do this correctly and to do it professionally, because there's no one looking over your shoulder saying, you know, you really need a better cover, or, you know, you have a lot of typos in there. They're not going to be playing quality control. They let the market decide. And then finally, and this is very different from some of the old self-publishing models where you might have used a service like AuthorHouse or Vantage or some of those older companies. In the e-publishing world, you really control the pricing, and you also have a lot of freedom to do promotional pricing or free pricing for limited times or permanently, if that's your choice. So just to emphasize again that the standards I'm talking about right now are fairly new in the writing and publishing world if we compare what it used to be like even just 3 years ago. So there's a lot of freedom here, a lot of empowerment here, but also a lot of responsibility put on you to do this right. Now, this is such an important topic that I just kind of I like to emphasize it again and again and again at the beginning because I get so many questions about it, and there's a lot of misunderstanding surrounding it. So when you are using these services, they are not acting as publishers. They are acting as retailers. They are acting as distributors, meaning they're not taking any rights to your work. They're just reselling it. So that means you're retaining all rights. That includes copyright. That includes print rights. That includes digital rights. It includes all the rights that you own as the author to that work. And you can do what you please with it. And there are a couple of important exceptions that I will discuss, and they mainly relate to Apple, of course. But for the most part, you have nothing to fear about using these services. Now, some people are worried about theft, and that could be a legitimate concern for you. But as far as the rights, by law, you retain all rights when you use these services, and at any time you can sell those rights to anyone you like. And I think all of you are probably aware of some of the success stories in e-publishing today, such as J.A. Konrath, Amanda Hawking, John Locke, the 50 Shades of Grey book that's now so popular. You know, these were all put out independently, sometimes for free, sometimes for very low prices, 99 cents. And these are all authors and books that still got picked up by traditional publishers, have still made a lot of money in print. Authors that did not damage their chances by putting it out, even if it was for free. So I just want to emphasize that because, again, it's kind of a paradigm shift from where we were at before in the publishing world, even just 3 or 5 years ago, where the common belief was if you put it out there for free or if you self-publish, you are kind of shooting yourself in the foot and killing your chances. That's just demonstrably not true any longer. Now, for those of you who may be traditionally published and you have your eye on your backlist and you're wondering if your traditional publisher has not put out that book digitally, do you now have rights to do so yourself?